I'd like to call the Human Services Committee to order. I'll entertain an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next on the list is appointments.
Public comment. Public comment.
Public comment, sorry. Any public comment? Okay. Public comment is closed. The minutes? Appointments.
We didn't do the minutes yet.
Oh, I
That
thought
was
we
the
did.
agenda.
Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from April 8th.
So move.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we're down to appointments. We have Tony Blair, who, Tony Bear, excuse me. Tony Bear.
Say Tony's in the house.
Tony Bear wants to be the commissioner for MSU-E. It's a vacant position, and it's indefinite. Pardon me?
It's a light.
This is, any discussion, commissioners' comments? Pass it on to the full board. I'll entertain a motion to have Tony go to MSU-E.
Oh, sorry. Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is Region 2 Area Agency on Aging. Deborah Eccleton is the applicant. Her CV is in here. Any commissioner comments? Entertain a motion to move it to the full board. All in favor?
Aye.
We still need a commissioner for Lifeways. I am one of them, but there's a spot that needs to be filled, so if the commissioners could think that over and talk with chair and see if we can get that going. Okay, next is Lifeways monthly report. Afternoon, Mary Beth.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So you'll see in your packet today this month's report to Human Services Committee. The other thing that just was added to your packet, so you'll want to look at that, is this handout. And this is an update for giving notice about the use of the millage dollars. So since implementation January 1st. So what you'll see in this communication is a breakdown of how many individuals that are uninsured and underinsured that we have been able to provide services for. We have provided services for 24 individuals since January, and this is only through the end of March. 117 services have been provided, and they range anywhere from case management to therapy to psychiatric services. We also, since January, put into play, we procured an RFP and selected a provider to provide social recreation enrichment programs for the intellectually developmentally disabled. It's called Club Life, and we're really excited about that. They are providing a variety of activities for individuals, and that has started. They just began in April, so the next reporting period, I'll actually be able to tell you the number of individuals served and the number of activities that have been provided. The other thing that we're moving forward with is supports in the schools, and we have a partnership with the ISD for 2 community school engagement specialists, and we did target the 2 schools that were most at risk, Springport and 4th Street Learning Center. The other services as it relates to the schools is supporting the Handle with Care initiative. with funding to support trauma services for students who don't qualify for the Medicaid population. So this is for the uninsured. So there's funding available to continue that work. The other support that is included in here is notice relative to the guardianship services in Jackson, and funding to continue that effort. And then the jail services. So you'll see that since January, 127 individuals have been served with mental health supports in the jails, with 231 services provided thus far. Also upcoming, there is work planning and occurring for next year's use of the millage dollars relative to creating the 24/7 access for diversion out of the emergency room. So stay tuned as that moves forward in late this summer as I present the proposal to the county for the use of those dollars for the second year of the millage. Before I move on to other items in my report, were there any questions about the update on the use of the millage? Okay.
Commissioners? Mary Beth, I have one. Okay.
Yes.
Since we're doing the stuff to keep the people out of the emergency room, okay? Do we get any kind of help with that from Henry Ford Allegiance? Because we've kept the people out of the emergency room, kept the cost down and so on.
I don't know what you mean by help from Henry Ford. I mean, there'll be a partnership in that if somebody shows up in the ED, we have a mobile transport team, so we can go and get the individual and bring them to Lifeways.
Okay.
So I guess we can have some further dialogue if there's some other thoughts that you might have that I'm not answering your question.
Talk to you next week.
Okay, all right. With that being said, then I'll move on to the rest of the reports. In your packet, you'll also see an update relative to our strategic plan. Gives you an update on the 4 overarching goals of the organization. We are in our first year of our strategic plan. A lot of work is occurring around the integrated health efforts and around creating the 24/7 crisis. Other work that's occurring as an organization is to continue the efforts to work at addressing areas of risk for the agency, and some of that is around our IT structure and ensuring that we have a failover in Hillsdale County, that we're continuing to stay on top of issues with the spam. I'm not an IT person, but the spam stuff that you get and all the multi-factor authentication that can occur on your system to protect the agency. Because it just seems like every single day you're bombarded with somebody trying to get into your system. So know that we are doing that as part of our strategic planning as well. When we look at things that are occurring within our region, it is important to note we did have our audit with Mid-State Health Network, who has the contract with the state for Medicaid, and you'll see the outcome of our audit. And actually, as an individual that used to oversee and was responsible for all the audits within Lifeways years ago, one of the many hats I have worn, this was probably one of the best audits, and I told staff that. That I have experienced. So it was an outstanding audit, well accomplished by all of staff. The other thing that is occurring is at the Mid-State region is the planning for the potential separation of one of the 12 CMHs and what that will entail. And, as a county commission, it is going to be important to keep you appraised of what's happening with that, because if you might recall, some of you are new, so you might not know this, but when the region was formed, because the community mental health is part of the county, if you will, and the county had to pass a resolution, if you might recall, for us to affiliate with this regional entity, it may require some action by the board when we potentially lose a CMH within our region, and they may add a community mental health to our region. So just kind of letting you know that that may be coming. Not really sure. We'll have to get feedback from the department as to what happens with Section 298, but you might recall you did pass a resolution for us to be able to go down that road back in 2014. So they're getting legal feedback about what might need to happen. So I'm just kind of providing a heads up about that. Yes.
Mary Beth, when that comes up that we may need to take action, I would ask that you would
Take it to a study session?
yeah, and give the board a good briefing on what happened in 14 too,
Yes.
so they understand it more fully. What we're talking
Yeah, and absolutely, because you do have, obviously, as many boards changes.
Yeah.
And trying to provide the context of how we got to where we currently are relative to that structure, absolutely, I will do that. The other thing that is occurring at a statewide level is there's a lot of advocacy that's occurring about the funding needs of the community mental health structure across the states of Michigan, and that is related to the fact that there have been significant increases in unfunded mandates that have occurred over the last, since about 2014. I heard no back there. But just so you understand, there has been an expansion of services. There's been an expansion of autism across the state, and eligibility of individuals for a service that is pretty costly, and concern about the fact that there is not enough funding to currently cover the cost of that service. It's the same thing with the expansion of Healthy Michigan. When Healthy Michigan went into play in 2014, the challenge on the community mental health side is that an individual coming into the community mental health with insurance, they're not really going to know if they have Healthy Michigan or Medicaid. They just know they have a health benefit. They have coverage. On our end, when somebody's coming in the door, if you have Healthy Michigan or you have Medicaid, you have the same benefit. However, the funding to provide those services is significantly less. So those with Healthy Michigan, the capitation is around $26 an individual. For those with Medicaid, it's about $260 a capitation. So you can see there's a variance less for Healthy Michigan, yet the benefit is the same. So when you hear in the news that across the state, community mental health are financially struggling from a Healthy Michigan perspective, that is why, is because of the level of funding. And so just, there's a lot of advocacy that's occurring at our association level to raise awareness about the challenges with many of these additional unfunded mandates to the community mental health system. The other thing that's occurring, I've talked about here before, we finally got notice about the waiver. So, as you might recall, I've been sharing the fact that we have been under an extension of our waiver. And what a waiver is the funding, trying to put it in simple terms, the funding comes from the federal government to the state, and the states have the ability to apply to the federal government, Center for Medicaid, and say, we want to be able to provide services in our state in this way, and you can design it specifically to the needs of your state, and you get what's called a waiver to allow you to do it a little bit differently than the feds have defined it. And every state is different. So some states have many waivers. We have 5 waivers in Michigan. We, as a state, were applying to the federal government for what was called an 1115I waiver, and the intent of the state was to merge all of the 5 into one. And we've been waiting 3 years. we finally got notice that the federal government approved the 1115I, but only for the substance use population. So that's where we're at with the 1115I waiver that I've been talking to you about over the last several years, about us waiting to hear if that got approved. What they did do that's going to create an administrative concern across the state is they did say for a specific population that they're going to move one of our waivers into what's called a 1915I waiver. And by doing that, there's about 30 to 50,000 individuals statewide in this waiver. Right now, the community mental health determines eligibility. So somebody comes in, we can immediately determine they're eligible, what services they're eligible for, and connect them immediately to services. With the 1915I, it's going to be an additional step that all of these individuals are going to have to be approved at the state level. So there's a lot of concern about what that means and what that's going to entail, because that means it's going to require a delay in access for some people. It also is going to require an additional administrative step for community mental health to have to submit information to the state to evaluate them to make a determination of eligibility at a local level. So we'll, I guess, kind of stay tuned as that moves forward. The plan is that the state has to actually have a process in place by October. So if you can get the gist of that, it's a little concerning about the time frame and the amount of administrative burden that that's going to place across the system. And the only other thing that's out there is that the Senate did release their proposed budget. We're still waiting to hear from the House. Once that happens, it'll go into committee. And not quite sure at this point in time what the implication is for the community mental health. But, you know, they initially thought that they may not actually have the budget done until late this summer, which probably has implications on the county as well, I'm assuming, and you probably know that just as well as I do. But that is it for my report. If there are questions about anything, no question is a dumb question if you're a new person and you're trying to understand what, so.
Thank you very much.
No questions?
Not today.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is medical care facility. Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here at the request of Ms. Kavinsky. She had explained that you had some questions regarding the financials that was presented last month. So I'm just here to address any questions that you guys have on those.
Are you losing money every month or by the end of the year?
So we did lose money in January and February. March, we were budget neutral. And then we've just proposed a budget amendment that has to go before the DHHS board for a vote that will look at our expenses and look at our revenue to bring it more in line with what the census was at the beginning of the year. So March, we did not lose any money. And April financials are still in process.
So how many beds are down because of the construction?
So the construction is all through now. So starting in January, we had 157 beds filled out of 194. So this has been kind of a progressive process of building that up, and today we're at 189. Actually, I think we're at 190 because we had an admit before I came today, out of 194.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Deb, you have anything to add?
No, I don't. Chairman Shotwell, I think, is the one that had requested this at the last meeting. I believe Delane spoke with you, and I think your questions were going to hold off till the quarterly report or something, or?
That's correct.
Okay.
My understanding also is that the administrator controller has met with the finance committee and received some direct response and answers to some different questions that we had.
Yes.
So we're moving in the right direction. I
Yes.
really appreciate that.
No problem.
I talked to your chairman also, not at a county event, but he and I candidly spoke about how things are going and how you've turned the corner and they're improving dramatically.
Well, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Finance Child Care Fund Budget Amendments.
Good afternoon. Last week, we received a memo from Zoe Lyons from DHHS requesting a budget amendment because there's an increase in institutional care, and the budget amendment that she requests was $500,000. Half of that is reimbursable, so we will get reimbursed for $250,000 of that, but the other $250,000 will hit planned fund balance, and that was a budgeted item. So, were there any questions regarding this?
Yeah, you're going to have to bring me up to speed on that,
On which part?
on the $250,000.
On the plan? use of plan?
Yeah.
Okay, so over the years, they have built up their fund balance. They have like $1.9 million of fund balance right now. So instead of the general fund funding the child care fund, the plan is for them to use that fund balance down over a period of time. So in this situation, we don't have additional revenue. We don't have $500,000 to cover this cost. We're going to get reimbursed for $250 of it, but that other $250 will just be also a reduction of their planned balance that was planned.
Planning for it.
Yes, it's a budget item.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, and we have to do this periodically because, there's a couple funds, and this being one of them. When we give them money, if they don't use it, they don't return it. They keep it, and it goes under fund balance. After a while, they build up. We've had some with millions, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Why am I giving them more money? They have all this money that's our money in the bank account. Let's just schedule them to spend it, which is what we're doing.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, commissioners? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve this and pass it on to the full board.
So move. Support.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thanks.
Marcy.
And if I may, just to add on to my last comment, because at the end of the day, whatever those costs are, we will have to pay them. One way or another, we will make it right and pay them, because we have an obligation to do that. Just FYI. It's right. It's not like there's some danger we're not going to pay them or any of that kind of stuff, because it's going to get paid. We have an obligation, and it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon. This first item is a Department on Aging budget adjustment, and what we're doing is having the grant-funded respite program under one budget, and currently it's in two different places. There's some historic reasons for that, but right now the Alzheimer's or dementia-based respite is in the geriatric mental health budget, and the in-home respite is in the in-home services budget. So we would like to move the Alzheimer's respite in the same budget as in-home respite. And that'll give us more flexibility as far as grant funding goes, because in the past, we've had to ask our funding source, Region 2 Area Agency on Aging, for permission to use funds from one program to the other, and they've agreed that we could have it under one umbrella, one service, so that gives us more flexibility. And the difference between the two is with dementia respite, memory loss respite, is the caregivers who are caring for someone around the clock who has memory loss we can arrange for a home care agency to come in the evenings or weekends, or maybe they need overnight respite at a long-term care facility. The grant will pay for those expenses. Where in-home respite is our home care workers who are assigned weekdays to go in and be with the person who needs the care recipient, we call, for 4 hours, maybe once a week, so the caregiver can leave and do the things they need to do outside of the home. So that's the two different programs, but we'll call it, we'll have it under one roof by doing the budget adjustment. Any questions about the respite services or? The expenses we've already spent out of for Alzheimer's respite will stay where they're at. The revenue that covers those expenses will stay there. So we're just kind of starting the clock in May. So that's what the budget adjustments reflect, May through December.
Any questions, commissioners? Okay, we need a motion to send us on to the full board, pass it. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Next is Department on Aging Monthly Report.
Okay.
You're up again, Marcy.
Okay. I wanted to explain what we call the Aging Network, or where our funding comes from. And Department on Aging Services, we're part of the County Commissioner's strategic plan under the healthy component, because we want people to stay healthy and active so that they can live independently, and then when they do need assistance, such as proper nutrition and in-home services, again, that helps people remain independent in their own home. So we have the two components, senior sites and home services, and our senior site programs are about 20% of what we do. Home services is about 80%. So with the senior site programs, there's nutritious meals at noon, exercise classes to keep people active, other classes and activities to keep people's minds active. And then our senior and family support services, information. The county does a survey every 2 years, a community survey, and there's a piece in there of older adult services. And the top item that people think is important is finding out what services are available and how do I access them, or eligibility. So that's an important component. The in-home services, personal care, respite I just described, caregiver support. We do counseling with people who are experiencing a lot of loss, counseling with caregivers, chore and unmet needs. And with our services for in-home, a social worker goes and sees the participant in their home initially and every 6 months. So we have a face-to-face with them to see what else they might need and if the services we're providing are adequate, that type of information. We also have a partnership with Lifeways where we do memory and depression screens with older adults, and that might lead into the counseling component. And gatekeeper is a word we use for when someone has a very complex situation and it takes more time for the Masters of Social Work person to touch base with them and make sure they're doing okay and connecting them with services. And Meals on Wheels is our largest piece. And in 2018, we served over 264,000 meals to over 1,000 homebound older adults. And in the quarter of October through December, 733 homebound older adults received 69,600 meals, and that can be up to 14 meals a week. So our revenue sources as Department on Aging, 44% is grants. On the left, there's Medicaid waiver, and that says 6%, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And then senior millage is a 40%, and then there's other revenue listed. So the grants come from what's called the Older Americans Act, and that started in the late 60s through the Administration on Aging, that's the federal level. Then it goes to the state level called Aging and Adult Services Agency. So then from the state, it goes to the region. There's 16 regions. Jackson is part of Region 2, Jackson, Hillsdale, and Lenawee. And funding's based on population of age 60 and older, because Older Americans Act says criteria is age 60 and older. Caregivers, it is age 55 and older. So it goes federal, state, then to the regions, and then the regions have requests for proposals every 3 years, and we write our request for grant funding for all the services that they say they'll fund. And fees are not charged for services. That's part of the Older Americans Act. We have suggested donations. And that was part of the pie that I mentioned as far as revenue. So when I looked at the 2017 Area Agency on Aging annual report, their revenue, the largest piece of the pie is the blue, darker blue Medicaid waiver. Now, we receive part of that piece because they contract with us for Meals on Wheels. So when they have clients that need Meals on Wheels delivered to the home, then we charge them the amount that it costs us to prepare and deliver the food. And then, so then the piece that we apply for is the 15% of the Region 2 Area Agency on Aging budget. My choice waiver, and that was described before as far as a waiver for Medicaid, that's Michigan saying we want to provide in-home services for older adults so they don't prematurely move into a nursing home. And this is how we want to use the money. So that it's through a different arm of the state. It's called Medical Services Administration. So of the federal and state grants that the Region 2 Area Agency on Aging has, here's a list that they presented to the committee in April of the funds that the Department on Aging receives currently. The grant funding. This not waiver, I'm talking strictly grant funds right now. So of that amount in the pie that's federal and state funds to Region 2 Area Agency on Aging, Department on Aging for Jackson County in 2017 received $1,109,000. And they also fund other services besides Department on Aging. That includes volunteer medical transportation, that's through Catholic Charities, legal services, and a long-term care ombudsman. What that is, if someone's concerned about the care that their loved one is receiving in a nursing home, a long-term care facility, there's a long-term care ombudsman who's neutral and can be an advocate for that individual or family. And then the Area Agency on Aging also keeps some of the grant funding for programs that they oversee, which are listed right there on this slide. And the Area Agency on Aging receives approval from the state Aging and Adult Services. So every year they have to submit a plan. This is how we plan to spend the federal and state grant funds. So then the State Commission on Aging approves that. So then the Area Agency on Aging is a not-for-profit, and there are 10 board members, and based on the population, Jackson County has 5 people appointed because we're about 51% of the over 60 population. Lenawee is 3, Hillsdale is 2, and that's the current board members. Any questions?
Any questions, commissioners?
Hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Marcy.
One other thing, American One Credit Union had bake sales and popcorn sales with their members, and they donated last week a check to Meals on Wheels for $1,243. And that's our culinary team received the check. So, okay. And then the rest of my report, I think you have there in writing. The staff training the topic was diversity and bias awareness, and we had 62 of our employees attend. We're planning our first caregiver conference for August 1st. I'll give more information about that later. And then Soups On for Seniors, $17,596 was received this year. So, anything else?
Thank you, Marcy.
Okay, thank you.
Next is the Health Department.
Good afternoon, all. I'll touch on some highlights in my monthly report. I know this one's kind of long and a little bit more detailed than what I normally do, but I wanted to let you know that we're very seriously looking at creating the capacity in the health department to do commercial health insurance billing. And our primary service line, really, I think that we would most focus on is the CDC recommended schedule of vaccine for children, youth, and adults. We have the ability to bill some other services as well, including hearing and vision screening services, which is kind of a bit of a surprise to us. But nevertheless, after we've checked with Health Alliance Plan here in the community, they've done some work with us through the Jackson Health Network to actually help us understand under what circumstances we could bill hearing and vision screening services to commercial plans. We do over around 18,000 of those screens a year, so there's a potential for a lot of revenue generation that we could use to offset some of our costs, but also to help fund other public health goals and objectives. So in the end of the day, that's what we're wanting to do. And of course, Rashmi will be leading this plan, moving it forward for the health department in the future, and any approvals that would be required would certainly come to the Board of Commissioners and to this committee as well. Rashmi did join us on April 29th, and the transition process is well underway. I wanted to also let you know that we've been collaborating with a combined school-based mental health provider and behavioral health action team in the community. This is organized primarily through the Intermediate School District and the Behavioral Health Action Team of the Health Improvement Organization here in the community. An opportunity has come along for us to collaborate together and submit an application to the Michigan Health Endowment Fund for a behavioral health grant opportunity. The Intermediate School District took the lead in helping us organize that and is willing to serve as a fiduciary for that. The Health Department doesn't necessarily have a significant role in it, other than we're very interested in seeing behavioral health services made more comprehensively available in school-based setting. So this grant helps move the community forward in that direction, and the ISD did submit that application by the due date. We provide a letter of support from the Health Department. We're continuing to communicate and work with Representative Julia Alexander on an access to care issue that we've identified through the Health Department through our hearing and vision screening program. The primary issue for us here is that families, particularly those on Medicaid, are having a lot of difficulty being able to be seen and make appointments with optometrists in the community who are Medicaid providers. It's primarily due to probably two things. Number one, the reimbursement rate is pretty low for this kind of a service that's paid for by Medicaid. And secondly, Medicaid families in general seem to have a lot of difficulty actually keeping appointments. So from a business model perspective, this is difficult for the optometrist. And we're trying to help characterize what this problem looks like on a statewide basis. We here in Jackson County, based on the analysis that's part of your packet today, we are pretty much at the bottom here in Jackson in terms of the ability to access optometrists by Medicaid providers, by our families. So we're not the only one that has an issue in the state, but we're probably pretty close to the bottom on both two different age groups, 0 to 3 kids, and then kids all the way up through the 9th grade. So we're working on it with Julie. She's going to schedule a meeting with stakeholders in Lansing, and we'll continue to let you know what kind of solution might be possible for that as you move forward in time. Under WIC updates, I did include a copy in your packet of the letter that we prepared and sent to Representative Sarah Leitner, but it was also sent to Representative Julie Alexander and to Senator Shirkey as well. We continue to be concerned at our state public health association level and pretty much in every health department that has the WIC program of a recently issued update to WIC policy 8.05. That policy is also included as part of your packet in case you're wondering what it's all about. But the bottom line is we're not in agreement that we should simply dispose of unused, unexpired WIC formula that's returned to us by clients who have changing formulas or no longer need the formula. We've been donating it to food pantries for 15 years or more, and it just makes no sense to us. We've not had a food security or a food safety issue in doing this, and on a statewide basis, the estimate is this is going to be about $500,000 worth of infant formula simply opened and dumped down the drain. We don't think that's a good policy decision. The WIC program did this because they received some guidance, if you will, not a directive, but guidance from the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. We've reviewed it at the Health Department. We don't agree that the WIC program at the state level has basically been directed to do this. But at the end of the day, probably in the final analysis, we may have little choice but to dispose of the formula. We're kind of fighting back right now and hoping we can change that.
I have a question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thanks. Interestingly enough, I was buying formula for my grandson this weekend,
Yeah.
and I was at a Poly store, no less, and I was looking for it, and come to find out, it was behind a liquor cabinet, or liquor, or whatever you call it, and so I'm like, oh, good, I can buy liquor and formula at the same place. But and I asked why, and they said, well, it's expensive, and it leaves the store, it's stolen. And I'm thinking, I thought it was really easy to get formula through our health department if you are in that position where
If you're eligible, yes.
you can't afford it. So, but I had a disconnect because I'm trying to understand why it is that people, if they can't afford it, can get it for free, but yet it's being stolen a lot.
Yeah.
We have two experts in the room, I think, on this one.
So, number one, what I've been told is the powder is used to cut narcotics.
That's a possibility, yes.
Actually, while I have the mic, there was something I wanted to address, and you brought up a great point. One of the only foods in a grocery store that the state can seize and force us to throw out is outdated formula. Not outdated baby food, but outdated formula. Everything else, by law in Michigan,
Yeah.
you can sell as long as you notify the customer.
Right.
So you're talking, you want to change the policy of,
We want to continue the policy of being able to donate unexpired, unadulterated, perfectly good formula to food banks when it's returned by WIC clients.
but you were talking about possibly expanding it to outdated as well, correct?
No, we don't want to
No.
expand it to outdated.
Okay.
No, we can't do
I
that.
misunderstood you, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we don't manufacture it, so I can't answer your question on that one, but anybody who you think might be eligible for the WIC program, refer them to the health department, because on the fiscal side, a family that makes 185% of the poverty level or less is usually eligible for the WIC program. So. You mean is dollar numbers? Oh, it's probably at least $40,000 for a family of four, and maybe higher than that, I think. Yep. You're welcome. So our state association talked about this morning in our board meeting as well, and we're still kind of pushing on it. I don't know if we're going to be successful or not, but I just wanted you all to know that we're pretty disappointed that the way that this policy change was also implemented. None of us at the local level, at the health officer level, were consulted and brought into the discussion with the WIC program staff at the state level to talk about this and actually put a little more common sense into it. But there you have it. The WIC funding formula did change a little bit of good news for Jackson County. We're probably going to get a little bit more money in the program. I don't know how much it is off the top of my head. I'm thinking it's probably a few $1,000s. But we're one of the smaller agencies. We're a moderate-sized agency, and there are those that are much bigger than us. So we'll benefit a little bit more. Under personal and preventive health services, the 2019 measles outbreak looks like it might be starting to wane a bit here in Michigan now. There are other states that have over 2,000 cases. Ohio has 2,200. Kentucky has over 4,000. Indiana has 1,200 or more. And we're in the probably 700 to 900 range, if you will, right now. but we haven't had another active case of measles diagnosed in the past 26 days. So looking at the incubation period, if we can get through another cycle of that, we're probably getting more in the clear of getting to the end of this outbreak, but we're still encouraging a lot of vaccination.
Any sense of why this outbreak? I mean, we haven't had an outbreak last year, I don't recall this measles, or last few years, and all of a sudden, this
Well-
year, we have this huge outbreak, and, you know, I could theorize, but I won't, I'm asking you.
I think Commissioner Shotwell has a,
Disease, Mike. These other under-vaccinated.
I hear you and agree, but this isn't the first year.
No,
Prior
they
to that, people got their vaccination.
they found the vector, meaning the starting point.
Oh, did they?
Okay, they did. It's a person who came to the airport, okay, and so on.
Yeah.
From I can't tell
it
you
always
where.
takes an index case.
Yeah, so they found the vector, okay, and so on.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And in different
How
parts
they-
of,
they can explain
I can
it.
sleep better.
it's kind of the perfect storm has managed to appear here with measles. In different states, you've had different groups of people who are quite unvaccinated. In New York State, Rockland County in particular, 25% of the kids in that particular Orthodox Jewish community were not vaccinated. And all you need is one case to come in, and it just spreads like wildfire.
Not to dwell on it, but we have time, right? This seems to me that
No, we don't.
I would have heard about it in other years too, you know? But I'm like, all of a sudden we kind of have more one vector for all these different states. I'm going, what happened?
We had, you're right, but we had unvaccinated kids or young adults from Michigan travel to the Mideast, travel to Israel, and come back with the disease.
Travel via airplane.
Right.
And the air isn't circulated. The measles is a respiratory circulation, okay? So.
It's airborne spread.
So then that guy gets on another plane and goes to
Yeah.
a different
Sure.
state. So it could be one vector just spread across the whole.
Oh, that's how it goes. Did you ever see
man.
that movie Contagion?
I don't want to see this.
Oh, you need to go see it. I think that's required viewing for you.
I have a question.
Okay, Darius.
Is the vaccination, is that very expensive?
No, it's not.
Wow.
And matter of fact, for families that are on Medicaid and low income or uninsured, it's actually free at the health department.
We have a very good county health department when it comes to that, speaking from a son whose mother was a county health nurse. And if you haven't gotten your children vaccinated, you have a real problem. You're putting them at horrible risk
Yep.
of diseases today that are resistant to stuff that's out there, and you need to get your children, grandchildren, and everyone vaccinated. It does not cause autism. It does not cause any of the problems that it's been attributed to. And it's very important that you get yourself vaccinated too. Make sure you've got your hepatitis all taken care of yourself, because there's many people out there who expose you to it. And this is the 2-minute lecture from the chairman. Thank you. On healthcare.
And the thing about it is that the original study that's came up and said it caused autism was then proved to be false.
Completely.
The guy had false data, and he was actually just trying to write a paper,
And the damage was done.
and damage was done.
Yeah.
Well, now those are people who don't want to believe in science.
Okay.
Okay?
We'll probably continue, but the science is clear.
Other nonsense like global warming.
Okay. I'll continue on. I did include in your report a copy of our annual communicable disease report for 2018. It's attached for your information. It does reflect the continued problem that we've talked about previously with you as well, with the increase in chlamydia and gonorrhea infections over the previous years. We're probably at the highest we've been so far. And the concerns associated with that have been previously brought to your attention. We've also continued to see an increase in chronic hepatitis C infections And we believe it's driven by continued problems with the opioid substance abuse in the community. We've noticed quite an increase in hepatitis C in association with that. And also, there has been a lot of emphasis on screening for hepatitis C in the baby boomer population. So we might be identifying some more cases that way as well. The number of Legionellosis cases is a bit on the rise compared to some of the previous years, but so far, my communal disease program office nurses have not been able to find a single source of exposure, like an institutional setting or anything like that. It's just kind of all over the place, probably more or less based on where people are traveling. And one other point, all of our data excludes any cases that occur in MDOC correctional facilities. So they're not part of our numbers. The Fisher Trailer Park update, we're pretty much winding things down now in that park. All the utilities have been shut off, the water supply, the electricity, the natural gas. I took a drive through the park about a week and a half ago. It feels like almost a war zone if you drive into there. I don't know if any of you have been into the park, but I can't imagine anybody actually living in that park. The windows are blown out, doors are off the trailers, there's household appliances scattered around, trash, garbage, and debris. It's going to be a big cleanup. But at least at this point in time, the persons who are living there, their health and safety is protected. They're all moved out at this point in time with the assistance of DHHS and other social service agencies in the community. Some additional no trespassing signs have been posted. Barriers to driving into it have now been placed, and it'll be police patrolled by Napoleon Township. It's about a dozen trailers. It's not very big, and a couple of accessory built structures. But it's an absolute mess, Mike. Absolute mess.
Whose responsibility? Is the private sector's going to take care of it?
Well, we'll see. I think the jury's kind of out on that at this point. It's owned by a company that's actually based in Toronto, Ontario. They're absent landlords. No one is collecting rent, haven't been collecting rent for probably a couple of years. The taxes, though, are paid through 2017, so they still technically own it. And they also own the trailers themselves. So the primary responsibility still rests with them to clean it up. But I don't know when and how that's going to happen and how we're going to force it. I don't think you can drag them here in a court case to force them to do it. So we may end up having to work with Napoleon Township to figure out how to do it and then put a lien on the property that we can recover the expenses. So that might be the final way it goes.
Either way, we'll end up with it if they don't pay the taxes.
Yes.
And it doesn't sound like there's a lot of incentive or market value in paying that tax, so.
No, I don't think so. I mean, we can almost see the company deciding, well, let's let local government clean it up and then we'll sell the parcel.
Yeah, well, we'll have a lien on the property, like you said, that's fine. We'll work that
Just
out.
give- yeah, heads up.
There's no freebie,
I don't think so either.
No.
A PFAS update. I just want to let you all know that some additional state funding has been approved for the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, which they're calling themselves EAGLE, to conduct monthly PFAS and harmful algal blooms cyanotoxin monitoring for community water supplies in 2019. And this is for type 1 public water supplies, particularly those who might actually be drawing part of their water or all their water from surface sources. All our water in Jackson County is pulled from wells, so we don't really have that issue here. But we do have a lot of type 2 water supplies that will become part of this next round of sampling for PFAS. And all those results will be posted on the state's website. Of course, we'll get notification here as well. And, you know, it's an ongoing public health issue, if you will, that needs our attention, and we need to monitor it, and we'll keep you informed. We'll report back to you. So that is my report for you, this Human Services Committee. This is my last report, yes. Rashmi, you will see her next month. And I just wanted to take a minute to publicly thank all of you, the entire board, if you will, and appreciate that I've been able to be given the privilege and the honor of serving the citizens of Jackson County as I retire toward the end of the week. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Richard. We appreciate your service to
You're
the
welcome.
county over the many years you've been here. Any questions?
No, but I'd just like to say, offer the same sentiments. Just thank you for your service over these past few months that we've been able to meet and discuss. You've really really poured a lot of information into me on how to best handle a lot of these situations and things that are going on, and just and even down to the small things of understanding all the different acronyms on on everything.
I spell them all out now.
Yeah. So I just want to just thank you for your service and everything that you've done.
You're welcome.
The claims?
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, we have the claims from March and April that commissioners have signed. Any other motion to approve the claims, please?
Support.
All in favor? Okay, those are the claims for both months. No other minutes, June reporting schedule. Public comments? Any of you ladies want to say something? Okay. Where?
Never mind, we're good.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor? Have a nice day.